County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Monday, October 3rd, 2022. It is 1:38 p.m. This is set to go until 4 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. Joining us via Zoom is Commissioner Gary Edwards, and we also in the boardroom have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and the team from the budget. And we are continuing this presentation from this morning. This afternoon, we will be covering a number of topics. We will be taking a short break at 3 and then restarting at 3:15. So with that, Robin, handing it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this afternoon, we're going to start out with some more of the overview things. But before we launch into some of the documents that you have, we'd like to do a demonstration for you of the new tool that we just very recently purchased called Balancing Act. You've already seen the results from the prioritization tool under Balancing Act. And what we'd like to show you this afternoon is what's called the simulation, budget simulation tool. So about a year or so ago, longer, I heard loud and clear that you wanted to do more citizen engagement when it comes to the budget. And there are a lot of ways to do that, but one of the easiest ways is online tools. And we saw a tool that we have since purchased, it's Balancing Act, what we're about to show you. And the whole focus is more engagement in the budget. Over the course of the last year, I've gotten emails from citizens saying, when do we get a weigh in? Is there any way we can see the budget before the board's making decisions? You know, how do we see what's in the budget? We do have OpenGov, our transparency tool. That tool is great for after a budget has been enacted, but we didn't have anything other than the cumbersome budget books that we prepare that really was a citizen engagement tool. So we're going to show you Balancing Act, and we've built a simple simulation that if you're all good with it, we're going to go live with tomorrow and have open for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And have information on what citizens think you should fund before we go into your decision-making week at the final week of October. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Before I start, do you want to give why we use the dollars we're using?
No, we can explain
we'll do that
what's
as we go
on the page.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is the admin screen. I'm trying to minimize. This is the admin screen, so you can't see. This is not what the citizen would see. Our simulation is the 2023 midterm budget development, and this is the preview. So if I were to log in as a citizen. No!
You still don't get the splash page. That's okay.
So it pops up with a splash page that says, it's similar to the ARPA survey that we did, where the ARPA survey had information about what we're doing. So our splash page says that here are our general fund requests for the 2023 midterm budget. We have a budget surplus of $4 million in the general fund, but we have requests that equal $7 million. So you, citizen, put yourself in the commissioner's shoes, make the decisions. What would you fund?
So it's kind of twofold. Part of it is to let the citizens see what you have to go through to make these decisions. And it's not just like, oh yeah, this is easy peasy. There's trade-offs when we make these when you make these decisions. So that's the part of it. And the other part is for the citizens to say, this is what is important to me, and this is what I would fund if I were you. So on the left-hand side, we have our revenues, and we had put our revenues in very simple categories. So we're just showing what comes from taxes, property sales tax, excise taxes, and then everything else is lumped together, and then we have our fund balance. And on the right-hand side, we have our expenditures. So it's set at what the current budget is, $121.4 million. But if you click on this left arrow on the strategic area, you see the offices and departments within that strategic area and their request. So I can look at the treasurer's office request and say, would I like to fund this? Yes, I would. And then I can come down to Health and Human Services and, okay, I like that one too. And then you can come down to Law and Justice and you see all of the requests within Law and Justice, and you can go through and click. I can add my FTE. Oh, and then I want to add these 2 FTEs. Wait, no, I don't want to add these FTEs. And then at the top, you have a bar that tells you how much left you have to spend. And you get to click, you get to fund or not fund things until you have balanced the budget. So I'm just randomly clicking things at this point because
So click the COLA,
that's where I'm going.
right? Because that's one of the big, if we add the big pieces, what you'll find, and the way we set this up is we reflected how much we think we're going to receive in revenue, and then we added sufficient use of fund balance to get you, the citizen here on the little sliding scale, to what we think is equilibrium, where the board will be able to project out to have a 2-month ending fund balance every year in the future. If you click too many things, there's a deficit. And you can see on the bar, you've spent too much. So you have to start taking things off. And we put in both maintenance and policy level, because your choice in maintenance level is, does the departments, do they absorb them or do you give them additional funding? And then all of the policy level things. We only focused on the general fund because we've only had this program for 2 or 3 weeks now. It's a brand new to us, but we were able to stand this up pretty quick.
And the language in the splash page that you cannot see has a note in there that these are only general fund requests, which does not include roads, public health, social services. So we have, because people will come in, because there's a spot for comments, like, these are the best thing and you should give employees a higher raise. And we didn't want them to say, you need to fix all the potholes on my street, because that's captured somewhere else. It's a different budget. So we have language in there that says that. I mean, that doesn't mean we won't get those comments anyway, but we address that this is only the general fund requests. When they balance their budget, or even if they decide to submit an unbalanced budget, we're not preventing them from doing that, but we are not allowing them to make changes in revenue. The revenue is what it is. We're not saying raise my taxes because they can put a comment in there that says raise my taxes because I want all of these things, we should have them, but we're not allowing them to make adjustments on the revenue side. And when they submit it, it comes up with a demographic, so similar demographics that we have with the ARPA, age range, gender, zip code, and then they submit. And then we share the information with you when we have it.
So it's a pretty simple tool. It's kind of a
bridge.
Yeah, it's certainly a bridge. It's nowhere close to a citizen engagement or advisory committee on the budget, but it is one way to give citizens an opportunity. And if the ARPA surveys, any kind of indication, people want to weigh in, and this is one way for them to do it.
Commissioner Edwards?
When you sign up, do you put your name and address on there so we know who's signing up?
Zip code, the last
Well-
four zip code.
And so we can ask for people to submit their email address, but it's not a requirement. The
Okay.
other demographics are we've required, but email address
When you say
is
the
a
other
choice.
demographics, do we
Age-
add?
What, I'm sorry.
What about who they are and where they live?
We do zip code.
Well, besides that, my name's Gary Edwards, I live in Yelp.
We're not requiring that.
Well, here's my concern. We require that at any public hearing, and I don't see why we would not require it to keep special interest groups from trying to have an undue influence on whatever we're doing. If we truly want to categorize this as being fair and a general feeling the public might have, I don't see how we can do it and just have it all anonymous. That doesn't make sense to me. Now, I'm just one person, but when we do a public hearing, where do you live? What's your name? So we get a sense of, are they affiliated with whatever concern? Maybe we could even have on their place, my priorities are, give them 6 or 7 choices as they start out into it, to get some kind of a feeling of, are we really getting real information, or are we getting special interest information? That's my concern right off the bat, so.
So we do have a field that we can ask for an address. And we can make it a required exit field. if
Well, we
that's
can ask
something
for a
that we
name. What's wrong? We ask for a name and an address in a public hearing, in a public setting, on television. They're saying that in front of everybody. I'm not saying somebody isn't gonna say, my name's John Smith, and I live in Rainier. I mean, we don't check up on them, but I think it's worth
We
knowing.
also don't require a precise address.
What's that?
We don't require a precise.
I don't think so, but we do ask for their
Where
address.
you reside in the county.
Yeah, where you reside in
And
the
some
county.
people give a general,
Yeah.
I don't wanna get away from that myself. That's one person's perspective, that if we're going to depend or even consider their input, why not make sure real citizens from here and not from Seattle or wherever? I mean, I know you got zip code, whatever you've got, but the reality is, why not? Can you give me a good reason why should not? We do it at a public hearing, why not?
we do it at a public hearing, but state law says that people can decline to give that information at the public
Well, I
hearing.
guess they can decline here and we can weight it accordingly. We can weight their responses accordingly. And that keeps the special interest group from taking over.
We could definitely do that. We could ask them to give this information without making it required.
Sure,
Because I think that it's been shown that you get better responses, perfectly valid responses, when you don't require a person to identify themselves,
I would,
for whatever reason.
I don't know why, but I'm saying if we do it for public input, why not do it for this public input?
Some people feel that they are.
Well, they don't have to give their name. That's fine. They have an option. They don't give their
We can
name.
figure out a way to make it an option.
I don't know what my seatmates might think about that. I mean, that's my initial blush, to make sure we get fair and maybe not quite so biased, you know?
I would also
'Cause
say
everybody
that
has
this
bias.
is certainly not going to be the thing that you're gonna base your decision.
No, but it's a good
One more
indicator.
tool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's public input is important, and trying to dilute some of the public input as to what is a special interest, or perhaps what is a, way in. Special interest, I believe, is in the eyes of the beholder.
Why do we ask people when they come in?
No, I'm
Where
just
the
saying,
evidence
I mean, because it's on the eyes of the beholder, depending on the issue, somebody can consider special interest, somebody can
Oh,
consider not
sure,
special interest.
sure. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't encourage an artificial stimulus to a particular issue.
So what
That's
you
all.
perhaps what you're looking for is somebody for you to have a sense as to where they live in the county.
Yeah, I don't care. I doesn't have to have their exact address. I'd like to have a name. I'd like to have, I live in Rainier, I live in Yelm, Bald Hills. I don't care what it is. They don't have to put their address down. But I do think it gives us a little more legitimacy to refer to. And maybe I might call somebody and say, hey, when you said X, why not call them back and say, was there a particular reason? Are we missing the boat here?
I don't know if we can ask if someone would like to be contacted or not. I know some surveys you take, you can ask that. I don't know, you don't need to answer that right now. But I think that for the same reason that some people don't want to give their name, they wouldn't want to give their phone number or to get a cold call saying, hey, you said this, and I wanna know more about that. You know, because, and I'm purposefully using a more of a not neutral tone. And that's exactly why some people won't take surveys when they have to give their name. Persecution is too harsh a word, but they don't want something to come back on them when they're trying to give an honest opinion, so they won't identify themselves.
But oftentimes from the bench, we will say to a citizen, boy, I'd like to follow up. Can you give
Yeah.
your name and phone number to
All
the
of
county
the-
manager
all
so
of
we
the-
can get back to you about this
That's
particular
when they're
topic?
having an issue with the county. We do that routinely when someone has an issue with the county.
Somebody brings a good idea,
Absolutely.
I might ask them.
Yep,
Sure.
that's true too.
So
So,
I just think there's a better way than completely anonymous. I don't know what that better way is, but I think there's a better way to keep special interest from kind of grabbing the show.
So,
That's
bite
where I'm
my
at.
tongue right there. All right, we can find a way to make, we can certainly ask for address and make it not required, and
That's-
email address.
Email is already selected as a not required.
Any
But yeah.
perspective of the other two board members?
Commissioner Munster?
I don't understand the whole special interest argument, but you made an argument on the ARPA that I think you're sort of making it differently today, but it was, can one person just go in and like, it's not a special interest, but if I, person X, wanna go in and put in 100 surveys, can I just go in and do the same thing over and over so I can get weight my opinion 100 times? I don't know that anyone would wanna do, well, I can think of somebody that might wanna do that. But most people wouldn't wanna do that, but I guess that is something that I'd be interested in. We talked about it in the ARPA thing.
Right.
You were saying something about if there's an IP
I get
address.
it, it shows, we would still get analytics, and one of the analytics shows the IP address.
So I'd have to go to 100 different computers in order to mask myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or get one of those, they have those VPN things or whatever.
So to me, that level of ability to see someone doing that is enough for me. I don't think I need all the stuff Commissioner Edwards is talking about. Because it doesn't, to me, and zip code is fine. If everybody, like if all the responses are from downtown Olympia and nothing from Yelm, and that causes Commissioner Edwards or any of us to say, this isn't a representative sample, we'll have that with the zip code data. So the only thing I'm worried about is one person trying to cook it. And the IP address, I think, covers that, so I think I'm good with what you guys are saying.
If I just can add that when you look at the IP address, if you see the same questions being answered or the same questions being answered the same way, then you'd be able to see who's gaming the situation.
As long as it's as long as it's, if 100 responses from one IP address is,
The same.
if that would if somebody would be paying enough attention to say, oh, look at this, that's all I need.
But also, you
Just because it's logged somewhere but nobody's looking at it, that's not gonna help.
and the IPX address, also the conversation was perhaps an employer can share a single IPS address and then can be made responses because their employees within that employment
Sure.
have a single IP
Is that how it
address.
works? I thought every computer, every connection has a separate IP address, no?
It's the network connection, so.
So the county would all be one.
So there is not I don't think a digital signature per workstation is how you access the internet, and the network.
Right.
Which is, the county shares a single. I think we have a couple depending on the location. But for instance, the courthouse will have a single one. And when we access, that's what has made it even more difficult with IT to narrow down, the circulation or the use of personal computers in the county because of that issue. So there is that. So I just want to make clarification that it's not a all or nothing on that IPA.
But that would require like the city of Lacey to say, we want all of our employees to weigh in on the county government. I mean, I'm not sure what organization would direct their employees to participate in something like this.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily arguing the point, just want to make a clarification on that.
Well, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't really have a strong opinion. If there's a way to say name optional or whatever, I mean, I'm not opposing Commissioner Edwards' request. I'm just saying it's not, I don't have a concern personally, as long as we can make sure that one person can't go in and get 100, one obsessive person go in and get, 100 submissions out of 200 that we get or whatever.
Right.
As long as that can be managed, I'm okay.
For me, it's the name's optional, address is optional. I'm fine with Commissioner Edwards' suggestion. And then whoever wants to put in their name, that's fine. And I guess, I don't know, the encouragement is always to get people to actually come in and provide public testimony. But seeing, I guess, just preliminary data and kind of for the public to be engaged, I guess, in a different way, where, usually you're hearing presentation after presentation after presentation and not really kind of tracking, but maybe utilizing this tool and being like, this is what they're talking about, and of course it's just like one of the funds. I think will help, especially some questions on like, well, why didn't you fund this and instead of this, and why wasn't this considered? I think, and I saw this tool at the NACO conference, they were there, and so I played a little bit with it myself, and I thought it was pretty user-friendly in terms of like, okay, this is, how much we have, and this is kind of what we all have to split it by. So I think it's a great tool. My question is, how will this be promoted out to the public?
So we have a communication plan, very much like with the ARPA plan. We've got a news release ready to go. We'll push it out on social media. We'll send it out, and we'll ask all of our offices and departments to send it out on any listserv that they may have, so that we can get it out as much as possible into the community. Again, the ARPA survey news release was quickly picked up and amplified. So we're well over 300. We were over 300 responses right away.
Close to 400 now.
We've got almost 400 responses to the ARPA. When I ran a much simplified simulation, it's got to be 6 years ago that I did that one, we got over 400 responses. So again, I think that the public is eager to weigh in. This is a simple, this takes a very simple look at, we're not fooling around with the base, but here are the things that the board is considering funding in the general fund in this budget round, and they don't have enough money to buy it all. What would you buy if you were in their shoes?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the whole thing's a good idea, but I do
Okay.
think there's nothing wrong with adding credibility to it. That's all
I
I'm
don't think
asking.
so either,
You
but
know,
we
I
wanna,
think the proposal to get that community input, nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, hey, we ask them at a public hearing, what's your name, where do you live? I just think that's so normal in government. that when we have public hearings in government. And so this is kind of an extension of the public hearing so that they can have input. So that's kind of where I'm at, that's the only.
So we'll explore the option to add the name and address as an option.
Yeah. And then,
Easy to do the address. We'll have to look at the.
I'd have to reach out and ask them if they can have the
The
name.
name, give you another feel for the name.
I have to ask them that, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, we'll find out before we release it.
and then some kind of, when we get it in, our ability to know which, they filled out the fields or they did not.
Right.
They
We,
do either.
we will be able to sort it.
Because
for
they
that.
don't have to put their email address or anything either.
That's right.
You know, or just asking a simple question.
We can,
Would
we
you
can
like more
totally
information?
weed out, if you will, anything that didn't give any identifying information from those that did. It'll be easy.
Okay, no problem. Sounds good.
It's exciting to have this new tool. We're super excited to put it out. The response to the ARPA prioritization was really wonderful. And we're hoping to get just as much feedback on this. It's a simple look. Hopefully by the time we do this next year, we can get an earlier start and it can be a little more robust because we'll know the tool better. But for having this for just a few weeks,
I do have
Good
just
job to be
one
able to
question on
put
your
it up.
example. It says law and justice, 88 million, legislative, it's 9 million, but then the total, it's 126. What's that about?
So the 88 million is the current budget for all of the offices
All
within law and justice.
Courts, prosecutors,
Yeah.
public defenders, sheriff's
Okay.
You're
officers.
missing some above.
Yeah, and so I've got things expanded, so if I minimize
Oh,
this.
Oh,
this
it
is-
all adds up.
Yeah,
to
it all
that.
adds
Yeah,
up.
Okay.
and show them the bar again because I didn't know that that's what that was.
So the bar is a percentage, so general government has 11.6% of the general fund funding. Law and justice has 70.1% of the general fund funding. Legislative has 7.5%, so if they hover over this, they can see Health and Human Services has 1.7%, little tiny bit. So this helps, kind of put the requests into perspective as well, because some of the dollar requests that each of the offices and departments are asking for is small. But when you have 1.7%, you're not gonna have hopefully a multi-million-dollar
No.
request.
But I think that's a little, I don't wanna say it's deceptive, but we spend many millions of dollars on health and human
But again,
services in
but
a different
And,
category.
and that's why we say in the splash page that the majority of health and human services requests come from a different funding source.
Right.
So
We're
this
only
is just the
looking
general
at
fund.
General fund for this exercise.
You know, because I was confused about that when
Yeah.
I was a candidate trying to figure out the budget.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is there only 1% of health?
Yeah.
That seems crazy.
Yeah,
And I don't know that there's all these other places.
right.
Because there's so much focus in the materials on general fund.
And
Yes.
what's not in here, and Robin, we need to talk about this later, is we can put links in our splash page to the general budget. We had talked about that, that's not in there, so maybe we wanna add that, so they can see the budget as a whole. And all of the, the
Right.
budget book and see all of the different funds.
Right, so we can link them to the budget site on the county webpage. We can link it to OpenGov
Mhm.
for them to see the transparency tool. We can link it to all kinds of other things if people wanna learn more. So, like I said, it's pretty exciting. We're super happy to have the tool and put this first thing out there.
If I was a citizen sitting down doing this right now without any more information, I would question, just like Ty did, about, well, we're only, you know, the 1% business. So I would hope that they'd be able to click on that and show, well, no, really, we're spending 72 million total.
What's in the little eye? See the information, yeah.
So this I is just, these are the groups that make up economic vitality. But when I click on community, or CPED, my information for CPED is a little bit more information. This is not the
You can
best
find out a
one.
little bit about the department. We could put in those little information boxes, other funds make up the majority of this area or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So there are ways. go in and do the survey when we make it live and then give us feedback about how it can be better.
I can do that.
I'll make my
Yeah,
parents do it.
make sure you put in your name and address.
I
So we can call you and ask about your answers. But, so we're going to brush this up a little, but in the next few days, we're gonna make it live and give you some feedback about what the public thinks. So,
I'm sure.
So
one step, I think
final
citizen
plan-
engagement's part of the strategic plan.
Jeez, Robin with the jabs. So, my next question is, so this is, you're saying this is the beginning and the use for it in the future is to kind of expand it to kind of with
Yeah.
the other budgets is,
Yeah, we're gonna see what we can do with this tool. So we can run an unlimited number of simulations, not that we'd want like 76 simulations open at the same time for every fund. But we can design the simulations to be focused on any particular area. We need to learn more about what we can do with this tool. And where I can see it going in the future is much more toward a balanced budget. You can see that we had to use some of the fund balance to balance this time, in part because that's what you all are considering, is you'll use some of this fund balance that we purposefully built up to have at this point in time. But if there's some way to have it be multiple funds and consider what's in the base as well as just the requests that are coming in, I think that you'd get a more robust feedback from citizens and a little closer. And I think that we could pair this up. I still don't think that we can afford a full-blown citizen advisory group on the budget that is like TST Citizen Advisory. But I think that we could take another step closer if we run some type of public engagement. It was one of the budget team was joking with me about, maybe you go out on the streets with a tablet and say, take this survey. Yeah, so I don't think it's bad if we had a booth at the fairgrounds. Yeah, take the budget to the streets, or some type of town hall meetings where we get some live feedback, or a booth at the fairgrounds. It's still never gonna be a scientifically valid survey that we have to spend thousands of dollars for, but there are ways to expand the outreach and get better participation. So we see expansion in the future.
We've had open houses before, right, with the dots and the boards.
We did, our consultant helped us with that. Yeah, that
was part of the
That was
strategic
good.
plan.
That was part of the strategic planning effort. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you. That's my train of thought. Sorry.
Okay, so more to come
Maybe
on
one thing, as you move forward with this and as you put, make information available to the public, I don't know to what extent you're gonna put out there, but I would hope that there would be the availability. If you wanna know more about law and justice, click here. If you wanna know more about the prosecutor, or the sheriff, or the jail. So the citizen, as long as the information's out there and we make it easier for citizens to review, I think that's always beneficial.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember, since the splash page wasn't splashing, can you email us that so we can look at what it says, or?
Yeah, we're reviewing the language because I wrote it and then I forgot to save it, so I had to reframe it.
Oh, okay.
So it's not as good as I wanted it to be.
Splash,
So
splash,
yes,
splash,
we'll
splash.
send it to you so that you can see it.
All right, so more to come, but we are working on citizen engagement. We think that's important. We want to look now, moving to the review. We're gonna go to what the team calls the colorful sheet.
Is that
And
the one by stage?
yes, it is, it's by stage. And this is broken down, again, it's solely looking at general fund for the moment. How much each office and department has requested at each level. So the way to read this is the assessor has a 2022 budget that includes Amendment 1 of $4,992,000 and some change. They have no midterm change requests for 22, so if it's the same. Their 2023 budget, that's the yellow column, starts at $5,130,000 plus. They have maintenance level adjustments of $9,000, and the assessor has policy level requests of $140,000 for a requested 2023 budget of $5,280,000. So you can read each line that way. And so this shows you where the requests are coming from at a higher level, not line by line. And then the detail that we'll go through breaks it down exactly what each office and department's asking for. But at a very high level, there are change requests in 2022 of $377,000. Then in 2023, maintenance level change requests of 2.8 million and policy level change requests of 5.3 million.
So can I ask a question?
Yep,
On the, looking at the orange
yep.
column, midterm policy level, the percentage is a percentage of what? When it says 23% for sheriff law enforcement,
5.2 million.
Right,
At the bottom line.
of the total 5.2 million request, 23% of that
okay,
request
so that has
is
no
from the
relationship to
sheriff.
any of their budget numbers. It's
No.
it's relative to the entirety of all the different office and departments requests.
That's correct.
Okay,
You can see though, that if you look at the yellow column, the sheriff's correction budget is 20% of the total budget.
that's under the yellow.
Yeah,
2023 budget with Amendment 1.
And law enforcement's 15?
right.
No, office, isn't it up?
So, when I created this,
Correction, no, law enforcement's 20. Correction's
correct.
15.
oh, did I have them backwards? Yes, I did.
They're right next to each other, yeah.
So it just gives you a sense of, is the proportion of their request proportional to the budget itself? That was a question a commissioner asked once.
Oh, so you're saying, so like, let's just say law enforcement is 20% of the budget. So the fact that they have 23% of the policy level is not, it's more or less in line.
Yeah.
Because they would have more because they have a higher margin.
Right. On the other hand, they get 46% of the maintenance level adjustments are law enforcement.
Right.
And that's a high amount, probably because of the COLAs.
Yes, as is the
Against the
COLAs.
COLAs. Yeah.
Commissioner
I'm continuing on just using the assessor as the,
As the
Example.
example, yeah.
so the budget that they ended with, is that the 4,992,000?
That is their current 2022 budget.
Okay, that's what they're, and basically, they're not gonna spend all that, but that's what they were allocated,
That
The
is,
assessor
yep,
will probably
appropriated.
come very close.
to spending most of it.
The assessor generally
Maybe
does,
that may not
yes.
be a good
He's
example, I
gonna
think when,
turn money in this.
And then what does Amendment 1 mean in comparison to midterm policy level? Because if you add midterm maintenance level with budget amendment 1, you end up with that dollar amount, 140,000. So
That's right.
play
So-
that out for me, how that works.
Budget with Amendment 1, because the board already adopted Amendment 1. It just, with Amendment 1 means that it includes
Well,
any
we-
adjustments made in that first amendment.
When you say we've already adopted it, is that a done deal? We've already done that?
Yes.
you went
Yes,
through
you
this
did.
year on that amendment 1.
I know, but then, I guess, how come that isn't where we're starting off? I guess it is where we're starting off.
It is where you're starting.
But we've already bumped it up. Okay, so now where does the 140,000 actually come from on midterm policy level? It's the combination of those two?
Yes. So
No.
the yellow column plus the blue column plus the orange column equals the purple column. So you started off with the yellow.
Yeah.
That's what's already adopted.
Mhm.
Under consideration is your maintenance level, that's the blue column. And also under consideration is the orange column, which is your policy. Those two together make up the 2023 budget request.
And that'd be 4%
Yes.
of the total.
Of the
Yes.
total budget.
Okay.
Yeah, we were showing pies.
Okay.
Right, and the 140 in that policy column is the next thing we're gonna do. We're gonna start walking through these worksheets that will
Okay.
tell you exactly what makes up
Okay.
that number. So this is just a kind of a for your information. It's one more piece of the puzzle. If at any point in time you wanna know what's their current budget, you got it right here. How much did they ask for in total? You've got it right here. How much does what they asked for compare to other offices? It's on this page. So it's just one of your resource documents, if you will.
So we're starting with the policy?
We're not gonna start with the policy. The policy's the,
Pretty heavy stuff.
yeah. We're gonna start with the easy stuff.
So.
And that is, I don't think there is easy stuff. but go ahead.
Revenue.
Revenue.
Okay. And
So where we can find that?
So-
Not on the tab.
it's not on, I'm on auditor. My first one up is auditor
So
on mine.
just to make sure, where to?
So in our
The first
file
one up.
structure, if you go to the K drive, and then you go to 2023 budget development, and then you go into the midterm, I think it says,
Yeah, I'm there.
okay, and this is budget request,
So,
that folder.
I mean, maybe mine got mixed up here somehow, but
I don't know.
I'm starting off with auditor.
It's here, it's on.
Budget request, okay.
Yes, and then at the end of each one, it says the title. So if we go to the K drive. 2023 budget development, 2023 midterm preliminary budget work session. There's a folder of budget request,
Yeah, at the end, okay, thank you.
and then revenue is the second to last budget request.
Yeah.
And then Gary, yes, yours should be the first printout. I believe it says revenue on the left-hand side at the top.
See over here in
So I-
green,
Yeah,
revenue.
so I'm trying to think where this one fits, but right here, okay, I'm on assessor here. Here I was on the auditor.
Let's go by the title.
So then we have to
Revenue.
copy
Okay.
these to
So
the
I'll get
best.
this one.
Yeah, so
Okay,
you just
but
take
I
that
don't have
entire folder, that
assessor
says
on
budget
that one.
request,
I don't
and
have
copy
assessor.
it into your personal folder,
because
then you
assessor
can go
doesn't
through it
have
as you
any
feel. So if you
How
go to,
does
That's
this
simple
compare
answer.
to the
This-
briefing that we
this is
had on
additional
September
revenue
7th?
come your way.
Because I have my
Okay,
notes
got it.
there,
As per the
so.
23
So
budget.
they're
Okay.
similar, but we've
Okay.
done a lot of scrubbing of numbers, so there are some numbers that are adjusted.
But that's in the document we just opened.
Yeah, but your notes, she was asking about the notes she took on
Oh,
a
yeah.
prior version.
So I think I can, I have a file that tells you exactly what changed, if that is of interest. From the last time we.
There's gonna be
Yeah.
probably not very many on the revenue and probably a whole lot on policy and maintenance.
So
Well,
Commissioner
for
was
the
asked a
general
good
fund.
question, is the spreadsheet. He said he doesn't see the assessor. This is not by office, it's only the offices and departments who brings revenue to the 2023 budget.
So we're gonna kind of go by the assessor because he didn't bring anything in, right? Is that what we're doing?
So am I understanding that you would like to take the colorful sheet and align it with these sheets that we're gonna go over? Okay,
Yeah.
so here on the colorful sheet, it's outlined by department. However, in the assessors, these are just expenses, so you won't see any revenue on here.
That's
The
it, that's
other-
this sheet.
Yes,
Jumps right to auditor, right?
the revenue
The
sheet,
revenue.
yes,
The revenue sheet, jumps right to auditor.
right, but this is only expenses.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, so you won't see anything that's on the revenue page on this colorful sheet at all.
Okay.
All right, so the auditor's going to be coming in, I believe on Thursday.
This coming Thursday?
Yep, this coming Thursday, to talk to you about the reasons that these particular revenues, and I think she's said it is revenues in recording document fees, passports, and licensing,
I believe so.
that are on a downward trend. So she's going to come and chat with you about what it is they're seeing there.
And it's gonna be less revenue, basically, what they're.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
$573 worth. The clerk has reduced revenue in the general fund due to the, help me with what's going on in the clerk's office.
So the clerk has to do, it says reductions are due to lower mental health billings from previous years, less criminal fines and fees associated with the courts and the waiver of criminal cases.
Right, so less interest is being collected, less interest, less fines and penalties. And then I'm not sure what the mental health
That's the ITA courts, I think. I wrote ITA in parentheses in my notes.
is that what this is?
So they had to basically guesstimate, I guess, how much they were gonna bill out for the ITA that's then reimbursed by the BHO, and that's lower, is my
Well,
guess.
that would imply that their
Sending less customers.
expenditures are also less.
Right, should
Yeah.
match exactly.
One would think. So we're gonna follow up on that. But less revenue coming in from the clerk. Then the next three lines are taxes, adjusting the sales tax revenue. You already know that I've reduced the general fund sales tax revenue to reflect a lower base coming in this year at 5%, so it's a lower base next year. Detention sales tax and treatment sales tax also adjusted downward based on what we're seeing. And later in the week, we will be bringing in the major funds, so you'll see the financial plans for detention sales tax and treatment sales tax.
And those two are new from the last presentation. It wasn't on the presentation, I'm mindful.
These lines were not on the revenue.
Yeah,
Adjusting the sales tax revenue.
yeah, for those two specifically, for the detention sales tax and treatment sales tax. I'm bouncing from one to the other.
All right. Okay, lines 6 through 12 are adjustments to the property tax. So, even though property tax is going up in the general fund, it had been overstated. So we're bringing that closer to reality in the general fund. Then The road and
Well,
transportation,
before you go on there a little bit, I'm curious on why did we make a mistake on estimating on property taxes? I guess I'm curious about that.
wasn't a mistake. We always go in with overestimating how much we think we're gonna collect, because according to state law, we can't collect more than is in the preliminary budget. So
So you
I
always go
take
high.
I always go high,
Okay,
always
I
go
remember.
high.
And
Yeah.
that is why you see the collection rate, you always hear Robin is close to 99% collection rate,
Right.
98, 99% is because of
So I've brought it closer to reality.
We're just, because of the law, the way it's written, we're forced to lie, basically.
We're not lying.
Well, we make
We're
a extreme
Overestimating.
estimate comparatively, because we have to, because if we don't do it, we can't make any more of an expenditure if we do, right?
We can't levy the full
Okay,
levy if I haven't estimated high enough.
yeah, okay.
So, and what we saw last year is every time I got new numbers, I have to put this in the preliminary budget, I'm required to by law. And then every number we got from the assessor last year was less. So my estimate
I think
was
before
higher
we
than
have
it
the
should.
citizens fill out that questionnaire, we better have them take a test. See if they understand this.
That's why I think some outreach, taking the budget to the street's a good idea. So you see that adjustment also in the road and transportation fund. It also shows up in conservation futures. And also in the public health fund, where you see the numbers going up is the Veterans Fund, which is getting a huge amount of the levy this year, just a big jump up. And then Medic One, if we were to talk in terms of winners and losers, Medic One levy is going up because they have the voted step increases
Yep.
every year for 6
They're not
years.
locked in on the 1%, they're getting the full
They
meal.
are getting, gosh, do you remember what the percentage was? I think it's a
It's a
7%.
step, some kind of a stepped process.
I think it's
somehow.
Yeah,
7%.
it was, for the next 3 years, they will have close
Seven.
to 7%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cumulative is significant.
So it's a big jump for Medic One. A lot more money in the Medic One fund. And then the last item on here is, we are adjusting state shared revenue. We think we're gonna get, more money, and do you recall which, is that from the marijuana? That's from marijuana.
Which line item are
See
you
the
on?
line number 13?
100,000?
Yeah, we think we're gonna get another 100 from
That's
marijuana.
in addition to the current.
That's still
Yeah, still a
less than
pittance.
0.5% or something.
yeah.
Right.
Still, no.
So those are all the revenue changes. Next one I'm gonna pick up, and then almost immediately put that back down is indirects. You've seen the indirect cost plans, each office and department, central services in information technology, financial services, and, HR all came in, did presentations to the board on all the changes in the indirect rates. This packet reflects indirects. If you want to go through it line by line, we certainly can, but it's just minutia. It's a whole lot of minutia.
Are you there on the special?
Yep, so bottom line for indirects is, starts, the bottom line, it affects every single fund, which is why the packet is so long. Thank you, Nicole. Page 11 is where the bottom line starts. You'll see the top line there for 0010 general fund is an increase in revenue of $756,000 and an increase in expenditures of $183,000. And then you go down the line and you see the impact fund by fund. I'm pausing because giving you a moment to look at it in case you have any questions at all. If you look at page 12, you'll see that the last, I don't know, about 10 rows, there's a lot of revenue. Those are the internal service funds that the money is being paid into. All the different offices and departments pay into these various funds.
So just, can I pick one out there?
Yep, please.
Like Grand Mountain water, wastewater and utility and water utility.
Yep.
Could you explain that just a little bit at shortfall?
Yes, for those two funds, because each one of those is a restricted fund, and the share of the internal service rates that those two funds pay are going down. The Grand Mountain wastewater utility is going to pay $49,000 less than we thought they would when we established the budget. And the Grand Mountain water utility will pay $3,000 less.
And I'm curious why, just why we did that?
There are so many pieces of these rates that we allocate that I could certainly dig in to see, but some things go up and some things go down. And when we do an allocation method that's fair to everyone, it's just how the allocation's strictly math.
With the 2-year lag, that also plays a role on this.
Is that playing in
Two-year
here?
lag is only for financial services and ER&R. Everything else is prospectively budgeted.
I'm just wondering, I mean, I know nothing changed in, down at Grand Mountain, and we should have added a few customers. I think it was a dollar store or something down there.
It's not necessarily based on the number of customers. It's not.
It's based on the services that that fund is using that are general. So the number of people who in this room are associated with that fund, or the number of whatever the activity. So if you think of it as an independent business that is outsourcing its admin or overhead. And so what we're saying there is that their admin and overhead has decreased.
I guess the only reason I picked that fund is, that's one thing that never changes is your sewer system. You know, I mean, it just doesn't change, so that's why I thought it'd be pretty stable, and it's not. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
For whatever reason, they are getting a smaller share of the overall internal service costs.
And we were doing rate adjustments earlier in the year. That's why I'm
That's exactly
wondering
what
why
we did.
this is reflected as a reduction versus maybe an increase.
So the rate adjustments that you're considering are fees that the
Okay,
utility users will pay. This is for the internal costs of the fund. The rates that the person that gets their water bill, the rates they pay not only pay their share of the internal service costs, but they gotta pay for staffing, and part of that rate's going into a reserve so they can fix the system. And there are so many other things, the equipment that the staff have to use and inspections and whatever else. This is just a very small piece of the costs that make up a person's utility bill.
okay, and so we're getting $49,000 less for sewer, and we get
Right.
ARPA money.
for sewer. Can we backfill that so we're not short?
No, you're not shorting anybody anything.
Okay.
The ARPA money is specifically for water and sewer for infrastructure projects. So the board is authorized for Tamishan and for, what's the other?
Beverly Beach.
Thank you, but it's Beverly Beach. Those are the two systems that the board's authorized water and sewer projects. And it is construction projects that we'll be doing.
Okay.
All right. Maybe it would be helpful if, I don't know, if one of you could quickly look up what the total interfund bill is for one of these funds?
Oh, well,
Would you have,
I'm not,
could you
I'm
do
just
that?
trying to ask.
Jennifer
It'll
might
take a
be
second to
able
log into
pull it up.
Questica because I'm not logged in anymore, but
Yep. Okay, so in a minute, we'll tell you $49,000 less than what?
That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. All right. Internal services. While she's looking that up, we'll quickly go through operating carry forward. This is something that the board has made available to offices and departments. It's just,
How about if I share the screen so the public follows through?
sure,
I can.
you can do that? All right.
I have to log in, I did not log in.
I logged out. I thought you were done with me, so I logged out.
Let's go ahead and take a mini break
A short break,
for
sure.
5 minutes. Diana will, I'm not sure who's looking up the
With the
information.
public to follow.
I can share my screen.
Well, don't end it, Ramiro. are back from our mini break. It is 2:46. And so we're gonna pick up where we left off.
Right, so next we're gonna look at operating carry forward. And Romero, were you gonna share your screen or Nicole? All right, Nicole's gonna share her screen so that you can follow along. Operating carry forward, as I was starting to say, is something new that we've offered to offices and departments. And it was in response to the feedback that we got from offices and departments that they wanted what they were calling a true biennial budget, where the board would just give them one number for both years. But for many reasons, you chose to go a different way and do 2 one-year budgets with the ability for any office and department to come in and say, I'm not spending all of this year's budget. Here are the things that, for whatever reason, I'm not going to finish this year, that I need appropriation authority next year to continue or complete. So we've made that available and advertised it somewhat, if you will. But there are only really 2, 3 offices or departments that took advantage of this opportunity. So the carry forward that you see, the operating carry forward, is where we're reducing the authority in 22 and increasing the authority in 23. One of the requests on line 1 is for the commissioner's office, and it's the COVID recovery fund. We know we're not gonna spend a huge chunk of that $56 million this year. We're rolling it into next year. So a negative 30 million this year, a positive 30 million next year. It just moves it to next year. In the equipment rental and revolving fund, in the replacement fund, in central services, got 45,000 this year in equipment that is being ordered but is not going to arrive this year, that we think we're gonna receive next year. So we're taking the money out of this year, putting it into next year, 45,000, and the revenue that goes with it. In line number 3, that's from non-departmental. There are a few items that we have not completed this year. We're requesting that we roll over into next year, and the breakdown is in the detail here. This is unspent money for the climate mitigation plan. That is the bulk of that. There's the money for the strategic plan is in there. And I think those are really the only 2 pieces, climate mitigation plan and the strategic plan.
So for the strategic plan, it doesn't give a breakdown, it gives a pretty good 70 for.
50,
Fine.
50,000 is what I think I have in here for the strategic plan. There might be a few miscellaneous items as well.
The bulk is for the climate mitigation.
The bulk is the climate mitigation plan that has not been spent yet.
Did you know whether the departments that didn't use it, just didn't need to? You know, because it was the treasurer and the prosecutor, I remember particularly advocated for this, and they're not on here, so that they just not need it because they used up their money, or you're not sure?
I don't know why no other office or department came in and asked for this. We again, I tried to advertise it, we made it very clear in the instructions that this was available to them, but, so.
That's a good question, because I remember it was during the elected officials meeting, and it was the prosecutor's office and the treasurer, so.
The prosecutor's office in particular had had wanted the ability to, but I don't know why,
Good memory.
yeah. Line 4 is from Public Works. It's for the Lake Lawrence Lake Management District. This is 200,000 in professional services that would, as they say, maximize their flexibility to respond to the needs. They're not spending it this year. They're asking for the ability to spend next year. And then line 5, also Public Works. This is for the Road Transportation Fund. It is for the traffic calming program, and it is to complete the work on the rest of the items in the plan. And this would be work being done in Tanglewile.
Was that
So-
speed bumps or something? Or-
You know, as you remember, maybe a couple of years ago, the board had a conversation related to the neighborhood requests the Public Works gets in terms of assessing, we're called traffic calming, speed bumps, sometimes there's small circles in those neighborhoods. They really, the strategy is to slow traffic down. The program didn't have any funding for quite some time, so this is the first time the board really has invested in this. And the department is going through the process of assessing all the many different requests and trying to respond accordingly. That is the traffic calming program Public Works has.
But this is more for studying the situation rather than a capital construction.
Yeah, because, a request by, requires a study just to make sure it meets the standards.
Right. It could be that we don't see more of the request to carry money over. Because when you look at the reversions of what you'll hear tomorrow, when we look at the information that Nicole has gathered on why do offices and departments revert money, the bulk of it really is from vacancies. So it could be that a lot of the money that they're rolling forward is because you don't want to roll forward vacancy saving money. It would just create a bow wave. All right, so that was operating carry forward. Capital reappropriation is the next thing in your packet. I am not going to go line by line through capital reappropriation. I will say that every item on this list works exactly like the carry forward in operating. These are capital projects that have started or already been authorized and for whatever reason are not going to be completed by the end of 2022. And so they're putting the money pulling it out of 22, putting it into 23, just to continue with projects that the board, again, already approved. So that's every item on this list. Questions about that? All right, the next packet I'm picking up is technical items and transfers. And we will work our way down this long list. The first item is from the auditor's office. I'm not gonna spend any time on the ones that net to zero because they're strictly technical.
And if it doesn't have anything there, that must be zero.
It's zeros. If there is nothing in the box, it's zeros. So we can skip all the way down to line 11, where there is a negative adjustment to the treatment sales tax allocations. And this was a technical adjustment where less expenses are coming out of treatment sales tax, because why?
This was the indirect adjustment.
Right, so this is the indirect adjustment, so we have authority already in treatment sales tax to cover these expenses. However, it was never reduced in the general fund,
That's
so this is correcting that.
It's just a correcting entry. Then we skip down to line 13, also treatment sales tax. 13 and 14 is, you see, it just moves from one fund to the other, and it is, the funding for the positions are coming out of sheriff corrections, and they will be paid by treatment sales tax. And it's within the same fund, they're just adjusting coding. And then on page 2, you drop all the way down to line 19. It's a $10,000 adjustment. This is the one we were looking at earlier, isn't it? For storm and surface water, it's $10,000 a year that will be
it's for the Healthy Lakes program.
yeah, it's for the Lake Management District program. Had we done that as a one-time and now it's being set up as ongoing? No.
No, that's the parks and conservation one that you're thinking of.
Right. The storm and surface water is just a $10,000 adjustment for why?
I'm looking it up.
It's taken it to stormwater from non-departmental, so.
I don't see the other side of the transaction.
I don't see the job.
Okay, we'll have to look into this and see.
Yeah, we'll check on what's going on there. Then you have lines 20 through 23. That is simply an adjustment for a capital project. It's just shifting salaries between lines. Page 3 is big net to zero. Page 4 is IT and ER&R. It's the cost for a mobile command terminal, and it just shifts the costs to out of ER&R into IT. It's technical, and then the last item is the distribution of leave buyout. If you add all of this together, it nets to zero. We're taking $187,000 out of non-departmental and putting it in the appropriate office and department that is receiving the buyout benefit. And that is all of these, and the impact to the general fund is a negative $27,000 at the end of the day.
I like those numbers.
It's just technical stuff.
But still a negative, right?
It's still negative, but it's still.
Saves a little. Thank you. The next one is grants, and it should go pretty fast, because I'm just gonna drop straight to the bottom line in grants. This is a wide variety of types of grants that offices and departments are bringing in. You'll see they're coming in from Superior Court, law enforcement, CPED, public works, emergency services, public health, all getting grants of various sizes. But the important thing here is that the amount of revenue coming in is equal to or more than the amount of money going out. So you'll see at the bottom line at the end of page 2 that the impact to the general fund in 2022, here's that $21,000 that you saw on the forecast. Revenue and expenditure in the general fund in 22 And then in 2023, in the general fund, revenue of $284,000, expenditures of $273,000. And then going right down the line, you see in every fund, they're bringing in more than they will spend. So when it comes time for you to make a decision on the grants, I'm going to ask you to approve them all in one swoop. Not today, but I'll pause for a moment if you have any questions about grants. But they're pretty straightforward.
Your line, page 1.
Yep.
Your line under 3, so line 3, you've got sheriff law enforcement broke into 2 categories.
It's because they're reducing the cost to the general fund by $10,455.
Okay.
And then they're increasing the costs by the same amount on the Interlocal Drug Enforcement Task Force Fund. And then that's where they are depositing the revenue coming in from this grant, the JAG grant.
Is the JAG grant the 135,000?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Any questions about grants? See if we can get through one more pretty quick. So tomorrow we can pick up maintenance and policy level. The last one we'll look at today is capital policy, and again, I'm not going to go line by line. But what I do want to say about the capital policy items is that you have reviewed each of these items in the CIP. This reflects the CIP, so any new capital project that was requested in the budget is reflected in the CIP. Again, you've approved that, and this is just putting it into the budget in the system.
Where are we with the, might be an unrelated question, but the capital expenditures at the Mottman ballot processing, are those coming next year, or, I know, we've gotta get it all done before the presidential election and all that.
We are hopeful to get it done by the time of the presidential election. I don't know how feasible that's going to be. We are currently completing the design work. Romero and I and Mary have received the initial design. Mary's office is giving feedback on that design. It's being refined. And one of the projects on this list is continuing to the next step to do the remodel work, but I need to bring that to the board because all you authorized was design. So that's all the farther we've gone
For which,
for Mottman.
I thought we authorized the first building's worth of work, not the other two.
You only authorized design
For
on the
building
first
one.
building.
Or building 1.
No, not even design work on the other buildings.
That's what you authorized. For building 1, where the ballot processing center is going to be, the board authorized to move forward only the design. The board didn't authorize any construction associated with building 1.
Well, not because there was any disagreement about it, maybe we hadn't seen the design, I don't know. I mean, the conversation was buildings 2 and 3 versus building 1. That's how I remember the conversation, and there was agreement by the board on going ahead with building 1, whatever needed to get done. And I was the one kind of pushing back on buildings 2 and 3.
I don't believe that is the direction of the board. You're absolutely correct. When you look at the 3 buildings, the board was agreeing 2 and 3 can wait. And the conversation on building one was at that point, we presented to you with a $10 million price tag.
That was for everything though.
No,
And
not
that was
for
for-
everything.
No,
No, that was just for that one building.
They were building one. And
I have the same memory as.
we can go back to the notes, commissioners, on that conversation. And the board authorized to move forward on the design of building one, knowingly that we'll have to come back with a more refined cost estimates for construction. We can go back to the notes. and
Where's the
provide a
money
copy.
supposed to be coming from?
That is the question that
biggest
you
problem.
need to, because you didn't have many options when this was presented to you on the $10 million tag. Again, I would more than happy to bring those notes to you.
Yeah, I have to look my notes up on that, but yeah, I think a refresher on that, because I have the same, that the 10 million price tag was for the 3 buildings, that we decided to move forward on building 1 because that was the priority
The
because of
immediate need, the
because of the
immediate need.
presidential election. And so,
That's why we purchased it.
and that's why we purchased it, and so
That is why we purchased them. We'll pull up the notes on that.
Well, I mean, it might be fine if it's just a matter of we're not even there yet, you don't need our authorization because you're still finishing the design, but I don't wanna hear that there's a delay because you didn't have the right direction from the board, because bring it back to us to figure it out, because I know if we're gonna be able to, I don't know, maybe we can't afford it, but if we can afford it, there's a timeline involved that's super important
Well,
to me.
that was the absolutely the question
We
is, you
agree.
remember, because you don't know where the money's gonna come from, because you didn't know the actual cost of the project.
Yeah. Well, but, yeah, so, but
Eventually, what's the funding source on that?
Good question.
I thought it was gonna come from the bond.
We can take that money out of the bond. That reduces the amount that's available for this
Yeah.
courthouse remodel project. And that's a pretty significant amount if it's anywhere close to the $10 million.
One thing about it, it's a valid expenditure of Reed. No question about that, I think, right?
There is no question that any of
That
these
paid to pay off
projects
the
are
bond
valid
and all that.
expenditures
I mean,
of
it's a
Reed.
county-owned building, more than 10 years,
That's
more than
right.
100,000, all the things that are
All
required.
the things, all of the projects in the REIT budget are all of those things, including the Mottman. So there's no question about it being eligible for that fund. It's a matter of what are your priorities to spend that money on. And at the time, the auditor was extremely hopeful for grant money that has not materialized.
I'm kind of closer to Ty's memory of that myself.
We'll pull
So-
out the
We'll
notes
bring the notes to
because
you,
the
because that was a robust
direction,
conversation.
Well, all I'm saying is, bring it back to us when, I don't want, like, at the point where you've got a firm enough, design that you've got a cost estimate, we need to revisit that.
And that's where we're working on at this
Yeah.
point with the
Yeah.
consultant.
I was just asking where it stood, because I hadn't heard about it in a little while.
If we
it
go
has
back,
taken a while to do the design.
if we go way back to initial conversations prior to the purchase of that complex, I was thinking it was like $1 million remodel dollar amount, if I remember right.
The early estimates
That's-
for
as we were being
remodeling
convinced
all
to
3 buildings
make
was
that
much
purchase.
lower
Yeah,
than
much slower.
when we, and we can talk about where that estimate came from too. But,
Yeah, because that estimate, the $1 million, and you're recalling well that conversation, Commissioner, when this was brought up to your attention. The $1 million, I have no idea where that number came from.
Well, I remember the number is all.
Yeah, well, you remember the number, I would be great if you could.
Maybe I don't remember where it was
Because
coming from, I might have questioned.
staff didn't provide that number because we didn't have an idea what the remodel cost will be. Until we provide the little closer number, $10 million, that's what you start having this conversation. How come went up from 1 million to 10 million?
I'm going all the way back to the Toys R Us building, and we're talking about all this stuff.
Yep, we looked at the Toys R Us building. We did indeed. All right, So as soon as we've
More
got
to come, I
recent
think, huh?
information, we will be coming back to you to have a discussion about
But
Mottman.
that's not gonna be something that's handled in this
It
spreadsheet.
is not, the Mottman project, I believe, is assumed in the, I'll have to look at
We have to
what's
look if it's
in. I will
included,
have to
should be
look.
included, it should be included under capital facilities.
It should be, and
It should be.
it is on
As
the
an
CIP.
line item. That, but still needs to, the board needs to decide where the money will come from to cover it.
Exactly, it's how are we gonna pay for it is the big question. Because again, the auditor has been extremely diligent in pursuing grants. So it's, she has worked hard on that. It is not her fault that we don't have them, but we don't have them. All right, at 3:15, we're gonna turn to Public Works. And I see the Public Works folks standing in the hallway. So we'll take, this is a good place to stop and give them time to come in. And,
We'll take another 5-minute
Yep.
break. And we are continuing with our budget presentation. We have Public Works staff here joining us this afternoon. So who am I handing it off to? Directly to Jennifer?
Sure, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. I have Karen Weiss, Assistant Public Works Director with me, and Ed Marson, who's our Operations and Maintenance Manager. First item up is the Parks budget request. So this was at the direction of the board. We put in a request for additional staffing, and there was already one position that the board approved, but we did not have it funded. So it's a part of the budget. This is an additional position that the board asked us to approve. So there are two positions that are being requested at this time for maintenance of our existing facilities.
And you may recall that this was part of your priorities list, the whiteboard exercise we did when it was like, if you had money, what would you like to see in the budget? So when Jennifer says this was at the request of the board, it was one of the priorities to be brought forward. And Nicole, maybe, did the board ask any specific questions about the parks item?
The general question was just to have more attention to parks, and I believe that was just the response was the 2 FTE would give that response to more parks.
Yeah, the request is coming for the general fund.
What policy item was this?
This is policy item.
Do you have that number?
3420, is that the budget request number that you're looking for?
Yeah.
M3420,
What's the line number be?
210. Line number 210. At least on this. Yep, I'm on right now.
I don't have. There's not 210
M
lines.
3420, she's given me the line item, M 3420.
Oh, if you've read it,
That's the change request
change
number,
request,
but
yeah.
that's not the.
We've consolidated our lines from that one.
We don't have those, so sorry.
Right.
It looks like it's item 50. No, this is ER&R.
General fund.
Was it item 54?
Yeah, yes, it had been 50, the change request is M34-20. So are you looking at the old list or the new list?
Page 7 of the policy request,
The new
line
list,
50.
it's lines 50 and 51.
7 on,
Are you looking
Capital
back at
policy.
your notes?
Regular policy,
Just
policy request.
So she needs to know what the line number was when we reviewed in September.
Sure.
Okay, where is that at under regular policy?
The title, on your new policy list, it is on page 7, lines 50 and 51. So this is the Parks and Trails staffing tools and equipment funding to increase the level of service delivery.
Yes, and Commissioner Mejia, it is on page 21, line 54 from the prior budget request.
My notes say 338,000 a year, so.
Yep,
Am I
that's
right
the
there?
one.
And just as a clarification, there are some one-time costs in 2023 for some vehicles and tools that would not be part of the ongoing cost for those two maintenance positions.
Let me get this right, it's on page 7?
Yes.
What's the line item again?
See the top two?
Just these two?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, under 20.
It's 338,000 in the general fund.
Okay,
Of that 338,000, 110,000 goes to ER&R to purchase the vehicle necessary for the staff.
Which would be electric, right?
We could certainly look at, to see if we can find electric vehicles.
And being that's a
I'll
one-time
find a way.
purchase, being that's a one-time purchase, why can't we make that out of that additional ARC money that you're thinking is available for vacant positions?
And you need to,
Depending on how much we come up with,
but you have to think in terms of, in your sheet, line item 50,
Okay,
that's 337,000 for the two positions overall.
right,
Out of that is 110 that goes for the vehicles. There's still a remainder, there is an ongoing, of just about $220,000.
yeah,
There's an ongoing in the general fund.
but the
So,
110 could be the one-time expense.
Right, you can, I mean, you can, those are the decisions that you can make as to what one-time revenues is if you decide to fund the two positions on the ongoing basis.
right,
Because it doesn't make sense for you to purchase vehicles without funding staff.
We might have some part-time help later on. It's gotta be out,
Not
think
without
out of the
more
box,
money.
think out of the box.
right.
Then we're not asking you for you to make any
No
decisions
decisions
today.
today.
So there's an opportunity for you to ask any questions to Public Works related to this request. That's really the purpose of this conversation.
And I think I was gonna suggest maybe a good tie-in too, is as you're having conversations about your trail connectivity program and thinking about building out your parks and trails facilities going forward. There's a direct correlation between adding properties and the ongoing maintenance needs.
How's this gonna fit with our 10 million shortage on that building one over in Montland?
It has no relationship,
I just thought I'd bring that up.
yeah, not related whatsoever.
Nice stretch, Commissioner.
I think over the last, at least since I've been here, so almost the last 5 years, there's been ongoing conversations about the financials for parks and trails, the sustainability of that, of revenue, the fact that certainly for what we have to maintain, we have fewer staff to be able to do that as it relates to even just our city. So if the board prioritizes it, we will make good use out of those individuals. We know, I think 2 years ago, we had a presentation to the board about the level of service for those facilities. And the board settled on a certain level of service and we have funding for that. And so while this won't necessarily increase that level of service to take us into a whole, different bracket, it will definitely add additional hours to be able to take care of the parks, which are seeing a higher volume of usage as well as our trail system, so.
What funds are eligible for this if we moved ahead with the whole thing? What funds? Besides general,
General fund,
and what else?
general fund.
No REIT, no conservation?
So you can't use conservation futures, you can only use 25% of that for M&O, and that's maxed out. And REIT cannot be used for M&O unless you can show that your CIP is fully funded, and we can't. So we can't use REIT for M&O, and then
We cannot use road fund.
no,
We
cannot be road
use,
fund. We max that out for
fees.
the trails, but we can't use it for the parks. The park impact fees cannot be used for M&O. It's the whole concept that we have money available to buy the asset, but then there's no money available to maintain the asset is really the crux of the problem.
Because the parks impact fees fund, which is for increasing capacity, that fund is robust, frequent, in a scale. Always the issue in the last 4 or 5 years is there is not enough money to maintain and provide a certain level of service to the parks. And that will continue to be an issue moving forward.
So, go ahead.
How far would if the, the bill that we were advocating for a few years ago on park impact fees, how far would that really get us? I mean,
That would have been, at least, where we were arguing to have 20% of the park impact fees to be utilized for, M&O. I think how much we generated, we have overall of the fund.
1 second.
You see, that would have been a more sustainable way to do it, and you are correct, but it was such a backlash.
we had
Did you get a little?
It was a backlash.
we got a backlash from, I think, OMB, is that right?
It was OMB and the real estate.
We did have support, I think, from Representative Dorio.
Yeah, and if I choose to champion in this.
Who's coming back to the legislature hopefully, and that might be an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm willing to fight for something like that if it's really gonna solve a problem, like if it's enough money to get us to some other, but I don't know if we're talking about just, it would help a little bit, but we'd still be in this huge hole. I mean, would it really help? Would it really solve to some degree the problem to have 20% of our park impact fees opened up for M&O?
I think so. I mean, we're looking at the balance is 2.9.
There you go.
And so
How much
And
comes
so we're
each year?
we took in park impact fees for 2021, 821,000. So 20% of 821,000.
$160,000 a year is, you can find those positions.
Yeah, that's about 200,000 a year is what they're asking for here.
Yeah, so the total is 188 annual staff expense.
Yeah.
And then 135 for a one-time purchase of tools, equipment and vehicles.
I don't remember exactly what OMB's problem was with it. We weren't increasing the fee.
And the counter argument to their position, but the intent of any impact fees, parks or traffic impact fees, is to build infrastructure as a result of the impacts of their development. But I can understand why they believe that the 20% to maintain those pieces of infrastructure which was created by the impact of their development was out of the conversation. As I recall, their argument was that this is just the beginning. And then local jurisdictions will tap into just to use for general purposes. But it never was intended because our position was every piece of infrastructure that it was built using any type of impact fees, that piece of infrastructure requires maintenance, and 20% is more than adequate. Our position was, if you open that can, it will drink the whole soda.
It's also why we developed the strategies that we have, which is to add capacity to our existing facilities. Because the more facilities we have, that spreads out the staff that we have. So we can use park impact fees money on existing facilities if we're adding capacity as well. So, and we've seen, a significant increase in usage of our facilities, so.
And it'll only continue to go up. I mean, the focus on outdoor use and recreation is just consistently going up, and as our population increases, it's only more people that are gonna go out and use our facilities, and we still have to maintain a certain level of service with that increased population also. So we are required to add acreage and facilities for these people that we will still have to maintain. And I think that this request directly kind of correlates to the amount of deferred maintenance that we've kind of consistently seen over the years. Whereas work that's not getting done because we don't have staffing or staffing hours, time to get to it. So we have to make the best decisions that we can with our dollars and staff hours to do the best that we can, but something's always getting left out. And as Jennifer stated already, you guys graciously awarded us an FTE last year, and it's been very useful to us. It's helped us increase the frequency of our janitorial rounds. It's helped us, and that includes maintenance of restrooms, cleaning of restrooms, picking up litter, emptying trash, keeping those facilities safe and sanitary for our guests and our users, as well as assessing and mitigating any safety or risk hazards. And then the majority of the time after that, we're really trying to do as much vegetation management as possible. And I think that the biggest factor in our entire system are the linear makeup of our trails. You know, you go to a park and you can pretty much see everything that needs to be done or what you have done. And when you're out on the trails, and we're talking 21 and a half miles of the Chehalis Western, by the time we have staff through there and they've mowed and limbed back all the trees, low-hanging branches, it's almost time to start again during that growing season. But we've then got to shift back to the parks because they need attention as well. And I think that if we had an additional 2 employees or 2 FTEs, it would help us dedicate employees to trails and to parks solely so that we could actually pay those facilities the attention that they deserve.
So your other funding option is the formation of a parks district, which would be an additional taxing jurisdiction that would need to go to the voters. And that is the other way to fund parks.
I have a sidebar question, completely unrelated to anything that's being presented, but something that just popped into my head and it's gonna bother me. We have a proposition in front of the voters and we're laying out some figures on the potential cost for that. Is that in the figures that we're seeing in this?
I have not factored that in yet. That
Is it-
750,000 a
Yeah.
year, no?
But that will be part of your biennial budget conversation next year.
Yep.
I think it's almost $1 million. It's something I think that we should definitely,
But that will be, it will not start in 2020.
I know, but still, if it passes.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was holding off on that.
You know, I think that it's worth, whenever we talk about this, I guess I haven't talked about it for a while. I used to say, you know, what do we have, 5 FTEs or something in parks or something? Is that where we're at? And Lacey's got how many? You know, 29 or something like that?
25 right now.
Okay,
We
25.
lost 12 FTEs.
Well,
We used to be 30, we always used to say 37.
something, I mean, something, you might look into that because their funding mechanism, and that bolsters Commissioner Mentzer's argument when we go to the legislature that, hey, here we've got X to take care of with 5, look at what Lacey's got. Just as a comparison, I'm not mad at Lacey, I'm jealous,
Does Lacey have a parks district?
but,
I believe so.
I don't
The
know.
city of Olympia
Olympia-
does.
Olympia
It's
does.
Homeowner pass,
Yeah,
Lacey's
Lacey's
failed.
Correct.
But Olympia has a parks district. They're able to
right,
support
but I'm
it.
just using this as an example to our legislating folks that
Yeah.
how, you know, under the existing rules, we just can't keep up.
I think we missed an opportunity back when Olympia went to the voters for their Metropolitan Park District to have it countywide. I think we absolutely missed an opportunity because that would have been an organization that oversees all the parks and trails and everything else across the county, regardless of the municipal boundaries.
We asked Olympia to join with us in that and they declined.
I know.
So the numbers that Ed gave were M&O, maintenance and operations only. They've got rec programs as well, so.
Oh, okay. But that's analogous to what, trying to compare kind of what we
Yes. And think about geographically, they're a much smaller area if you think about for the county. I mean, we staff have to go out to Deschutes. That's
It's an hour, yeah, an hour. And I think that our average park, we average 50 minutes round trip just in driving time alone across the county.
I went to Deschutes Falls in Fry Cove in one day and that was the day.
Yeah.
I just wanted, when I first got on the board, those were 2 I'd never seen.
Mhm. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from Fry Cove to,
It's quite a trek.
yeah.
All right, anything else on parks, or shall we move on to the Lake Management District? Let's move on. The request is, while they do the musical chairs, the request is for the formation of the Lake Management District for Patterson Lake. Public Works sent in the request to be able to staff the new Lake Management District, both this one and the one coming up. Offit, right? Yep, Offit Lake. And then this does not include, but we should have a conversation about the concept of front-loading the fees for Patterson Lake. What some of you have talked about as a loan, but I don't know how that would work. So, talk a little bit about the line item is M4316. For those following along, it's on page 6, right about the middle of the page, kind of bluish kind of color. There you go. All right, go ahead.
Do you want to start, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll start out with what we know. We have the proposed Pattison LMD that is in process. It's out for a vote right now. You authorized that vote. We are expecting that will likely pass, and that Lake Management District would be formed probably in February of 2023, maybe early March of 2023. Tracking, 2.5 months behind that is the Offit Lake Management District. So the board has signaled that they would like to assist with getting them moving forward. The timing of the formation of Pattison, we've missed the window. We will miss the window to get those assessments to the treasurer's office to be collected for 2023, in 2023. The request includes, as Robin spelled out, our anticipated staffing needs for those LMDs, and as well as some operational work in 2023. First and foremost, first order of business for any LMD coming on board is the integrated aquatic plan that they would then operate under if they were to do any herbicide or other vegetation management within the lake.
And those are approximately how much?
Those are approximately $40,000 to $50,000.
I want to clarify something, because you're talking about both the possibility of loaning, and it's something the board discussed for both Pattison and Offit Lake. My recollection is only for Pattison Lake,
It's only Pattison.
and the reason for that was because the delay that happened with Pattison was because we were going through a process of, forming the administrative rules, and their request, happened, and then it was delayed because of, board actions, but Offit Lake didn't really have that problem just because they came in kind of after that, and so theirs was processed quite in a timely manner. So I remember that the conversation was just for Pattison Lake only, and I'm looking at board members because I might be off on that, but that's what I remember.
That's what you have in front of you. I think the question is, and Robin, I know you and I had a conversation about this, the Offit Lake timeline is likely to happen in early 2023 to mid 2023. So formation of that could potentially be during 2023, where you will have the same question before you, whether that starts June 1st, September 1st, or you decide you're gonna do it as of January 1st, 2024. But you, at that point, would have a budget amendment before you asking you, how do we fund the first year or 6 months or 4 months or whatever that looks like of costs for Offit Lake as well.
Was this a request from Offit Lake? Because I don't remember, or in conversations with them, it really,
Go ahead.
Maybe we can, the 165,000 that you see in the request on this line item has two elements. One is what the board discussed, front-loading Patterson Lake only. You're correct, Alphen Lake, I don't remember they ever asking to front-load the operations next year. But out of the 165,000 is one additional position to support not just Patterson Lake, but also the future Alphen Lake. So those are the two elements of this request that you see of 165,000. Is, I don't know how much is the position cost, but the remainder is just for Patterson Lake.
Staff costs are about $99,000.
Yeah, so that's really the two elements of 165. So you're recalling correctly, Alpha Lake never was part of this conversation. But the FTE is, and this is the time to add the additional FTE, knowing that perhaps these two LMDs will be formed early next year.
Exactly, and there's no point in half an FTE now,
Right.
half an FTE later. You might as well do one FTE if you're gonna do it. And there's no revenue from either of them coming in 2023, even though they are most likely going to be established in 2023.
In addition, we will always have a bridge element, right? Because if when we assess, it's going to start coming in April of any given year. So when you you've at least got from a January to April time period that you're gonna have to bridge in those first few years or the first year or so of formation to cover cash flow.
So what is so Pattison, let's say, forms in January. They've got to do an IVAMP. Is that our staff? I thought they contracted out. I thought the 50,000 was so that they could contract out with somebody to get that done. So what's our staffing needs for that first 6 months while a contractor is doing an IVAMP? Do we still need like the full, amount? Let's say it's half an FTE, sounds like what you're saying. That's what Paula was spending or whatever. So if it's half an FTE per lake, is that gonna be filled up during that first 6 months while their IVAMP is getting developed? Or can we delay, is what I'm getting at, can we delay we definitely, I'm convinced we need this staffing,
Yeah.
assuming that the Lake Management Districts vote to form.
Yeah,
But I'm just trying to figure out when and how we can manage that with the
Yeah, this-
IVAMP.
Well, right now, we don't have anyone that could do it.
no,
so-
we don't have anyone that will
We need,
do it.
but that's filling an existing position. You're
Correct.
talking about adding a new position.
Both, right, yes.
Yeah,
To even be able to, my point being, to be able to even take an existing FTE that we have and prioritize and say, okay, this part of your job you're not gonna do because we're gonna prioritize this to contract out and manage a contract for the IVAMP. That's my point, was saying, we don't even have somebody to do that right now. We're
Exactly, right,
recruiting,
because
but-
the IVAMP and the contract with a potential contractor needs to be managed by the county.
correct.
Exactly.
The LMDs will.
Well, that's what I'm
manage.
asking, I mean, is it 10% of the work, is it 90% of the work?
Yeah.
Of what it'll be like once they get rolling and,
That's
Yes.
just one element of standing up an LMD, right?
That's one element. They would also, in their first year, they would want to begin water quality sampling and gathering some of that baseline data for their lake. So to answer your question, there would be an immediate staffing need. Probably at, 3/4 of what it would grow into. The IVAMP, even though there's a consultant writing that, it is led by county staff and there's an engagement with the community piece and there's a lift there.
Okay. And am I right that, is that what I know Paula was doing 2 lake management districts, but she was also doing something else with pulling weeds out of Shalis River or something, or noxious weeds. So how much I can't remember, how much of her time was L&D related?
Yeah. 70% of her time was LMD related. That was trending in a direction that was not sustainable. We were struggling with some of the rivers, starting to struggle with some of those rivers projects, but 70% for the LMDs.
It'd be better if we had, you're saying a 0.5 per lake.
Correct.
Well, Tim, just to make sure we're clarified, because we do have 10% of this particular aquatic resource specialist position supporting stormwater.
Stormwater.
So, in the long run, so in theory, that 10% would always go somewhere else and you'd have a 0.45 FTE split between two LMDs.
It would actually be supported by the stormwater utility to do education that aligns with the stormwater utility to the lake management district. So very close nexus there.
This is general fund, I would agree.
This request is for general fund because we've got no revenue coming in from the lake management districts in '23. And then the concept of having it be a loan, I think is problematic because in 2024, we'll collect the fees, but then those fees are gonna be needed to do whatever the next treatment is and to build up that fund. And if they have to pay back the general fund, then you're in a losing game every year.
Right. They will never be able to catch up. So
Yeah.
you may consider this to be a one-time to the general fund. Because eventually, the LMDs, when formed, they will be bringing the revenues, they will sustain their programs, and they will sustain the additional FTE. And that was the parameters in which each of the two parties in Upper Lake, they understood the conditions, I believe. They needed additional staffing. So when you look at this particular item, you know, just for the general fund, could be considered as a one-time. Because you will not be seeing general fund additional
Continuation.
beyond. Yeah, so when you look at this, I encourage you to look from that point of view. It will not be an ongoing to the general fund.
It would be the entire 160,000.
Right.
We did do an inquiry into, with legal regarding if there could be like a double assessment. And so that's potentially a possibility if the board did not want to give it as funded out of the general fund.
Meaning you double assess in 2024. You'd assess for
To
2023
pay back
and in
the,
2024.
If the board did it as a loan.
Yeah.
and wouldn't that have to be part of the ballot measure that goes to the voters?
We did preliminary investigation and the answer was we potentially could put it in like the ordinance or the forming documents. But we will say that we asked at a very late time last week, we got a preliminary answer. We would want to make sure if that was the path that we went forward, that we were able to cross our, and there is the whole public outreach piece of that.
That
It
might
wasn't
be
ruled out.
problematic. Yeah,
Would be the
correct.
fair way.
We're just trying to throw the options out there, make sure we
Figure out a way to.
Yes, it is the LMDs, you know, continue to enhance our communications with them, obviously. This will not come across very well if all of a sudden they're gonna be assessed twice in 1 year.
Well, they're mad that we're not assessing them next year.
I'm
So
Just
actually,
saying.
we're delaying. They can take the interest off of what they would have paid in 2023 and they'll come out ahead from what they actually really want, which is for the assessment to start in 2023.
I don't agree with you, Commissioner.
So all of that needs to be considered when it comes time to make a decision about how to fund Pattison Lake.
I mean, is this something that, I'm interested in that double assessment too, like I would like to know more information from legal for sure, but I also would like to know like from the Pattison Lake LMD, if that's a possibility that they're open to, like, and hear from their steering committee on, you know,
Right, they
whether
can do they can do the education. Hey,
Yeah.
guys, this is a way for us to get started. You know,
faster and,
Commissioners are trying to help us. Are we okay with that? And if they give us a thumbs up, I'm fine with it, if it's legal. Versus a loan.
I'm willing to assess this against the stormwater fee. And the reason I am is because it's water that runs into the lakes and causes 70% of the damage to the lakes is caused by stormwater. And so if we can have that fund pay for this service, I know that people will talk about that being a stretch. It's not quite the stretch as our rainy day fund, because we are talking about water in the rainy day fund. And I'm willing to take money out of the rainy day fund and make this happen. So that's where I'm at. I am willing to move forward on several avenues at this point in time.
So we can certainly look into the legality of using the stormwater fund.
I think there's something there.
We will take a look at that. And,
And also when those lake management districts are formed, there will be a 50% reduction in the stormwater fees for all those members.
So they're losing out at least on 20% if it's 70% damage.
all right. So with that, let's move to the last topic that we've invited Public Works to chat with you about, and that is the road fund. So, you didn't have any specific questions about the policy level requests that are being requested to be paid by the road fund. However, you did want to look at the road fund financial plan. So that is before you, and I'm gonna grab a copy off the table to look at.
And I think Scott's prepared to kind of go through that too, at a high level, revenue, expenditures.
Yeah, and,
Okay, you want me to
Go
grab it?
ahead, go ahead.
What page we going to now?
Packet, you should have a packet
I got
of
it.
funds,
Yep.
and the road fund is the second page, Fund 1190. And then you also have a fund, all right, but you didn't bring the road construction fund, just the M&O.
Okay.
Okay. So 1190 is the one that I have.
so we're all set?
Yep.
Wonderful. So I think before we dive into the spreadsheet, what I'd like to do is just give a little bit of background about the road fund and some of the trends you might see on the 10-year financial plan. At Public Works, we've been, the last few years, really taking a kind of a more of a deliberative approach on how we tackle some of the road issues that we have, whether it's the roads, the bridges, sidewalks, et cetera. And what we've been doing is, we've certainly recognized that we can't do everything the community wants us to do, nor can we do everything we need to do. Simply put, because the needs we have outstrip our demands, much like lots of areas in county government. But where we see that, and you've probably seen it or heard from the community about that, is we see that our pavement condition deteriorating. We've looked at the growth we've been putting out, where the community's been putting out some roads as the community grows. We're expecting to see, 30% growth. I mean, it's a significant amount of growth by the year 2040. And we're seeing that traffic congestion build up at Marvin Road, on Martin Way, and other parts of the county. We've seen our bridges, as they continue to get older, they were going to require more and more repairs. We saw that on the N1 bridge earlier. We're doing that right now on the Hawkesbury Road Bridge. We have some expansion joints we are fixing. So we expect.
What bridge is that?
It's the Hawkesbury Road Bridge up on Hawkesbury and South Bay Road. So we're going to continue to see those things happen as our roads age, or our bridges age. Then on top of that, the emergencies we had first part of the year, Cooper Road, Sunrise Beach Road, and those types of things. So we expect additional demands to be continually placed on the road fund as we move forward. So to really address the needs we have, we've looked at, how can we do this in a strategic way? How can we prioritize the money we have to address the highest priority programs and projects we have? So since 2019, we've been really we're now wrapping up several programs which are going to really produce a list of high priority projects for us. The countywide safety program, we'll be identifying projects like guardrails, rumble strips, critical safety improvements, our ADA improvement program, where we can identify crosswalks, ADA improvements countywide, neighborhood traffic calming, we started to do that already this summer. So these are all programs we've done that are putting out a lot of projects. We've got several more in the works that we're working on now and more planned for the future. So what I expect you'll see as we begin to build some of these projects, the demand on our road fund will continue to increase. So we've been at, you might say, a hiatus for years, but as we start building some of these, we're gonna be eating up more and more of that ending fund balance. So over time, I expect to see that ending fund balance to decrease. When we look at what's supporting all this, it's supported certainly by the county road fund, mostly from the road levy, the property tax. About 70% of that funding comes from the road levy, the property tax. 19% or so comes from the gas tax, which we continue to see declining, and we expect that to continue to decline. And I say that because there's very few sources that county roads can typically get their money. Grants pay for capital projects, but those require a local match, which comes from the road fund. And the road fund then is certainly affected by the road fund diversion and the levy shift, as you're well aware. And that not only affects our operation maintenance, but our capital programs as well. And to put into context before I jump into this spreadsheet of numbers, the part of the spreadsheet talks about the road fund diversion and levy shift. And to put into context, I looked at a report that County Road Administration Board produces, and the county's $2.75 million road levy shift is the fourth highest in the state, and the diversion is $1.5 million at the second highest in the state. And again, I just put that out there for your for context and just for your awareness. So with that, I will jump into a spreadsheet, which we like to do at 4 o'clock on a Monday, just to get things going. And let's see, I think you're all looking at the Fund 1190, Roads and Transportation. So, looking at the top, you can see that the property tax is programmed to go up gradually over the next, through 2027. And maybe I'll just give you a moment just to digest this, if that would help. Or I can.
Digest what?
To digest some of the information on here, I can kind of walk through some of the key things. So road levy, the property tax I mentioned, one of the big contributors for revenue. The motor vehicle fuel tax or the gas tax, you can see that going up, but not nearly so much. And again, the long-term projections of that, as more and more electric vehicles come on the market, we expect that to decline. We have in here REAP funding for pavement preservation. Last few years, we've been heavily reliant on that for our pavement overlays. What you're going to see in future years is additional requests from Public Works for additional pavement overlay funding to support our pavement preservation program. REAP funding for Woodland Creek Estates, that is payment on a loan that we did a septic and sewer conversion project. Time escapes me, 15 years ago.
It's not that long, but
Oh my gosh.
it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
Like 8 or 9 years.
Oh, okay, that's off for a bit, I guess, but maybe it seems like 15 years.
It's hugely successful.
Yeah, wonderful project. And then when you go down to well, first off, any questions on the revenue side of the road fund? It's a
Do you
lot
ever,
to digest.
do you ever use stormwater, the stormwater fund as part of your projects when you're doing road work activity?
Yeah, in fact, just this year, I've been in discussions with Tim Wilson, who's just here, about using stormwater utility funds it can only be used for the stormwater piece of a road project. So we can't use it to put in the lights or the crosswalk. But we are looking at how could the utility help fund that? So maybe it's paying for the building a stormwater pond, or maybe it's paying for part of the catch basin or drain pipes. Country Club Road is another one where we've already looked at what could we make a reasonable argument for to have the utility help fund that project. I mean, that's a great one. That will take some very tricky, technically challenging, and likely expensive stormwater treatment on that. What that is dollar-wise, we we don't know yet.
I've got just an example up at Clearwood, or near Clearwood on Clear Lake, the Clear Lake area, where the public access is on Bald Hill Road. We've got a very serious liability problem there. I don't think it's been fixed yet. It has been fixed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. But did we pay for some of that because of that runoff that is affecting Clear Lake? So could some of that bill be paid by the stormwater fee? Because that's what it was directly related to, stormwater.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I'm not super familiar with that one.
It was maintenance funded.
Maintenance funded?
But that's out of the road fund, right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to lessen the burden on the road fund and shift it to another legal expenditure where there is some money. So I'm just using that as an example, that maybe we could be a little bit creative and help our road fund a little bit.
Yeah, certainly we have to, any discussions we have that, we have to make sure that, you know, we're following what the stormwater utility funding was really intended for. And, you know, Tim's been very cooperative in starting to look at this and figure out what does make sense and what can we legally do, and then what should we do.
Well, I'm always concerned about the legality.
Yeah, for sure.
How much does that cost, Mike, to do that, do you know?
I'm sorry?
How much did it?
Oh,
This is Mike Lohman, our road operations manager.
Do you know off
I
the top
don't
of your
have
head?
that off the top of my
Okay,
head, I'm
good.
sorry.
Sorry, to put you, I didn't want to put you on the hot seat. Thank you.
so any other questions on the revenue side of things? Looking then at our expenditures, one of the areas that you can see us really increasing our funding, it's about in the middle of the expenditure side, is the pavement preservation. So namely, this is chip seals and overlays, where we've been having some success lately to try to request from the board and use REAP money for the overlay part. We can't use REAP money for chip seal, but we can for overlay. And we've really started to program out a more robust pavement preservation program, which is why you'll see that funding or the expenditures going up over time from the, 2022 is about 4 million round numbers up to 6 to 7 million in the outlying years. A lot of that is supported, our request would be to have that supported by real estate excise tax, partly. One of the last things on that expenditure side is the operating transfer to 3010. That's our construction funding that funds the capital program. So, well, again, what that does is support the grant matches that we have. The capital program is heavily reliant on grants, so we use that as the, 10, 20, 30, 40% match for local or state and federal grants.
So what you would say is that that transfer is dependent upon our success at getting grants. So the more grants that we get, there's the possibility that that transfer dollar amount increases.
Just quick, can you tell me why they allow you to use REAP funding for chip seal or vice versa?
Not chip
We
seal.
can't use it for chip seal.
Okay,
Use it
but
only
you can
for
use it for
overlay.
overlay, right?
So,
But which is road preservation, and what's the difference? I mean, they're both road preservation, aren't they?
I'm gonna take a stab at that. You cannot use REAP for maintenance and operations. And chip seal is not considered a major renovation of a road, but overlay is. An overlay project is. So we split some hairs and took a stretch
Oh,
to
good,
make
good, I like
part
that.
of the projects authorized for REAP too. We are stretching but
I'd like to go
chip
argue with
seal
somebody
is,
that one
well,
is and one isn't.
I think if you go argue with someone, you'll find out that it's possible that neither are.
Well, I don't wanna, I say I would like to.
Yeah.
But keep stretching.
That's what it is, it's a stretch.
Yeah, overlay is considered restoration, and the state law has well-defined what 2R, 3R, and 4R are. So it goes from, the 1R is rehabilitation.
Yeah, then rehabilitation, restoration, then, I was just in a discussion
That
this
should be
morning.
part of your Bible, man.
You put me on the spot.
But anyway, so
Replacement.
the
Yes.
rehabilitation part of the 3R component is stated on the WACs meets the criteria of overlay. Because you're not maintaining, you improving the life. Because fundamentally, the chip seal only expands the life for another 5-6 years. Overlays, they'll take you 12 years.
The bureaucrat that figured that out probably doesn't put a roof on his house either. Just lets it leak.
I think
I've just stated the facts.
I know.
Commissioner Mansouri, go ahead.
I have a question, just kind of big picture. So like looking at the year before I got here, 2018, 16 million, and then it tracks along and it goes up to 19 and it's back down and what's projected is at the beginning of 2025, we'll be right back basically where we were in 2018. So I'm wondering, you know, in other county contexts, like public health and other general fund, because of ARPA money and stuff, you wouldn't be able to really draw any conclusions about something like that. But in the road fund, has there been any weird one-time money or influxes, or is this just kind of the way it is? We're just not we're keeping the fund balance solid, but we're just not doing as many projects as we need to be doing.
Well, I think the last few years, that's when we've been really taking a look at
the planning.
the planning piece, you know, it's the putting together the studies to figure out where do we need to spend our money, what different programs. And now, as we start to move forward, we'll start implementing some of the projects that were identified in those plans. And some of those are likely to be grant funded, some will not be grant funded, likely funded from the road fund. Our traffic calming program, we just started our first improvements this year. That's road fund funded. The ADA program, we have elements of grants in there as well as road fund. So it'll be kind of a mixed bag, but I think one of the things you'll see is the capital side of things will start increasing over time our expenditures, resulting in a decreasing ending fund balance.
I think not only in capital, but also in maintenance and operations, as well as we look at the staffing of the crews that we have to maintain the infrastructure that we have. So while geographically, our county may be getting a little bit smaller as maybe cities annex, the complexity of the work that we're doing and what we're needing to maintain as our population grows, the complexity is growing as well. And also just an expectation of level of service from our community in terms of what they're expecting of us.
I would just add on the plan, we use some pretty conservative estimates when we look at future costs, and I recognize it's a point in time, but I also want to remind us of what we're finding in the way of materials and supplies to fund construction and maintenance and operation for roads. And so I would not go on record as saying these projected costs out in the future years really are reflective of the costs that we are incurring or finding today when we talk about some of those supplies and things.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point because it's the material cost not only for the capital projects, but operation and maintenance as well. As you've seen, oil prices have gone up a lot over the last 2-3 years. You know, that's reflective in our chip seal and our overlays and a lot of the road maintenance work we do. And also fuel costs too for all the equipment that we operate. Steel's gone up. I mean, as we all know, and I'm sure you've heard 8,000 times, everything's gone up in price. And that's really, you know, certainly hitting us pretty hard too. Chip seal was a great example. This year we had to cut back, we planned 55 miles. We went down to, I think we cut 10 miles off of our program.
Up to 42.
So simply because the prices had gone up so much.
So does this plan in the out years reflect the TIP and the CIP?
Yes. But yes, but remember those are on Fund 3010, not in 1190.
Right.
So our Fund 3010 reflects the CIP and the TIP, but would only be showing through the operating transfer right here. And
That's built in.
it
It's
is,
the 1.5 million that we talked about, depending on the grants that we receive.
correct. It's something we are continuing to evaluate, and if I had to say, I bet those numbers will change and increase in future years. It is our current plan, but as Scott talked about, we have some planning programs now that are going to drive some of that work, and so that's likely to be revised overtime.
So is there a budget request, Robin, that we're gonna be applying this to, other than the decision not to continue to reduce the shift?
That is the main decision tied to this fund in this round.
I mean, I think the key thing for me when I look at this from a financial standpoint is when you look at the revenue and expenditures, our expenditures are always exceeding the budgeted revenue, right? So that's to your point, Commissioner Mincer, over time, that draws down fund balance. So just as a general statement or a financial statement, that's
And the
what.
future projections.
Yes, exactly. You know, if you, that dark blue line, if you go and follow that out, that just shows you that that's the difference
mean,
between our
And
revenue.
again, you guys
expenditures.
all talked about the future, but my question was really about the past. Like, my question was, how have we held the line from 2018 to 2025? Is it because if the public's looking at this and going, you guys are doing good, you're right on track, you know, is it because we just weren't doing as many projects as we needed to, or is there a more nuanced, like, taxes spiked that year, or this incredible grant, or we shifted over a bunch of ARPA money to the road fund, that's one time, it's not gonna continue? I mean, what's the story behind how we've been able to hold the line from 2018 to 2025 with no diminution of road fund?
Yeah, because I don't think the goal has been to hold the line. I think that we want to be doing more with the money that we have. And so that's part of that planning piece that Scott was talking about in terms of looking at what do we need to be doing. That's the plans that we put in place to then be able to implement those plans. So an example would be we've been having $50,000 allocated for the ADA transition. $50,000, the amount of work that we need to do. We just finalized our transition plan at the end of last year, beginning of this year. We need to program out a lot more money than $50,000 on the ADA plan. Traffic calming, the same.
Yeah, and we've got neighborhoods, you know, I think it's the Hawksbridge neighborhood, I mean, we've already got neighborhoods lined up that are interested in the traffic calming program, just like we did this year on Husky Way in the Tank Wild area. It proved to be a really popular program once we started that again.
What was it, speed bumps or what?
Yeah.
What would the ideal fund balance be?
Well, I mean, we have on here a 2-month, for just cash flow purposes, is about 6 million, though I would tell you that would make me very nervous for a road and transportation fund that we need to be able to respond to emergencies if they come up, right? So, good question. I can't tell you right now, but, you know, I would say it's more than the 6 million for sure, you know.
But probably not 50.
Maybe not
No.
15, but again, we're talking 15 now and then gradually decreasing over time. So, you know, I would say somewhere in that $8 to $10 million, probably somewhere where we would want to be if we had in the Pacific Northwest, but we know what potentially could be happening in our areas.
Well, and we're also not sure what's going to happen as we, you know, with automation and what is that in terms of infrastructure, what does that look like for the county and what we have to build?
I'm confused, why did then, when you came and said the costs were increasing and we gotta reduce our number of miles of, was it chip seal we were doing, or
This year, yeah.
we can't use? Then why didn't we just say, oh, you've got an extra 9 million, let's do it? It's a good investment, right?
Sand shed.
The earlier you do it, the better.
That particular issue was a little bit different. Because the chip seal went out to bid, and I think it had 52 miles they were planning to do.
Right,
The bids we received were much higher,
right.
so we need to reduce to meet within the expenditure authority the board provided. That was way before you amended the capital projects to include the
That's what
overruns.
sparked the conversation.
That's what sparked the conversation, though, and you're right, it wasn't not necessarily because we didn't have the money. You know, it's because we didn't have the budget authority to do more than what you approved to do. So that's what the
Just two
discussion
different
was.
processes.
Yeah, 2 different processes.
But maybe we next year do make those miles up by,
Yeah, and I'd probably encourage the department include those miles that we couldn't do it this year.
also
We can
did
do
some
that
of
as
it-
soon as oil gets back down to $32.
And we had some of our road operations, road operations do something else.
Yeah, some of the roads that we did not chip seal, Mike and his crews were able to go out and do some work on those roads up in Fish Trap and some areas that,
Spot work, is that what you're doing? Spot,
Pardon me,
spot improvements?
it was a full repave of that area.
so we're able to use some of our own crews to be able to do that and respond pretty quickly, which is wonderful.
Okay, any additional questions? It is 4:18. We are adjourned for today.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
Thank you for the conversation.
Hey, Scott.